Hi everyone, my name is Sara Tamsukhin and I am a student at the University of Cincinnati. I am in my third year of the PhD in Educational Studies program, and my presentation today is on a research proposal called Measuring Empathy and Cultural Competence in Dietetic Students. This is an important topic to me because I've been a dietitian for a long time, and I'm really interested in how we develop the next generation of dietetic students to be culturally competent, empathetic, and ready to work with a diverse population. So a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion in health. These are important concepts that need to be considered so that we can reduce health disparities and improve health outcomes. Reducing health disparities and increasing awareness should be a priority, especially in terms of racial and ethnic disparities. Addressing racism, prejudice, discrimination, and implicit bias is a social responsibility. It's something we should all be aware of, but especially in the healthcare field so that we can improve healthcare. Empathy and cultural competence can improve racial justice and reduce health disparities. So that is why I've chosen these two constructs to look at in dietetic students. Empathy is both cognitive and affective. That means that empathy is something we have to think about, but it's also something that's emotional. So there are these two pieces to it. Empathy helps us to build connections, whether it be between patients or other caregivers, family members. It's really an important construct. Cultural competence and cultural humility are also related to building connections, getting to know each other, getting to understand each other's cultures, or just be aware of other people and their differences. Empathy and cultural competence can impact both personally mediated racism as well as institutional racism. So even though empathy and cultural competence might be individually targeted, increasing those constructs in a single person might be an individual endeavor. However, hopefully those people will continue this work and spreading empathy and cultural competence to others and helping others to grow in these concepts and really targeting the institutions to reduce institutional racism. A little about dietetics education. Probably not very many people are familiar with it, but dietetics education should prepare students to be socially responsible. So this should be healthcare providers who are ready to address racism both personally and at the institutional level. The current dietetic standards do not fully address diversity, equity, and inclusion and do not include empathy. So dietetics education is standards-based education, and it does have one individual outcome related to cultural competence, but it's very general. There are also competencies related to communication skills, but they do not specify empathy as a communication skill. Empathy and cultural competence can be incorporated into dietetics education, and this will help to better prepare future dietitians to be socially responsible. And I say empathy and cultural competence, but these are just two constructs, so I don't want to limit the education to just those items, but these are two items that can definitely help in the right direction. So the purpose of the research study is to learn more about students' empathy levels, cultural competence, and familiarity with diversity, equity, and inclusion concepts. So this is just a starting point that will hopefully give us more information about how we can better address the dietetics curriculum. I have 3 proposed research questions. The first is, what are the empathy levels of dietetic students in the United States? There's currently no research on this specific question in the United States. There are some smaller studies in other countries related to dietetic students. Are dietetic students' empathy levels and cultural competence related? So what are the connections between these two constructs? And are dietetic students familiar with diversity, equity, and inclusion terminology? So again, this gives us a starting point to hopefully eventually impact curriculum. A little bit about the research methodology. There would be a survey provided to undergraduate dietetic students using probability sampling with stratification. The empathy part would be measured by the Toronto Empathy Questionnaire, which is widely available. It includes both the cognitive and the affective attributes of empathy that I mentioned earlier. So there are some empathy scales that measure just cognitive and some that focus more on the affective, but this particular questionnaire is a combination of both. Cultural competence would be measured in terms of cultural knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs. And then questions to determine student familiarity with equity, implicit bias, and racism, especially in healthcare, would be added as well. The analysis, well, the survey would be conducted through Qualtrics, so all data would be collected there. The data would then be analyzed using our software, specifically looking for associations between the TEQ scores, the cultural competence scores, and student familiarity with the diversity, equity, and inclusion terms. And again, once all of this is completed, the goal is to learn more about how or what or if changes need to be made to dietetics education to better address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here's just a brief reference section for some of the articles I mentioned. Thank you.